Welcome everybody to the first review for The Last of Us on HBO Max. I don't know what it is anymore. But
It is showing on HBO. It will
HBO,
also it will also show on HBO Max because that's what HBO does. They try to corner the market every which way but
right?
loose. I'm pretty sure eventually they'll put it on Discovery Plus. There's no telling how many different outlets they'll try to put this show on.
I know, right? So,
Maybe even the ID channel. From what I just saw in this first episode.
uh, as you said, Last of Us. This has been a long-awaited, talked about. What are they going to do? What is this going to be? And as somebody that's played part one, part two of those video games, the skepticism has been on the all-time high. And I can say after watching this episode, I can kind of calm down a little bit and say they actually do care about the material and trying to get this right as much as possible, and give you a little bit more here. Um,
So so hold up that. Was it a fear that HBO wouldn't care?
no,
I
no, no, no,
mean,
no, no. I
I,
never had any doubts about HBO. I think
okay,
just the
okay.
track record of video game to film or TV
Ah,
has been like the thing. I mean, when you go down the list, the track record ain't that good. Tomb
I mean,
Raider,
but
Doom, like yeah,
and
it's
this is
not
a show that is completely done by PlayStation Studios. So this is the first project where PlayStation and Sony has taken over completely
that.
and put their own team in place to adapt something or any form of their material. So at that point, I mean, with that and with it coming on HBO, who to a fault at times, HBO is extremely faithful to whatever they're
Oh yeah.
adapting. But again, from someone who's never played anything of this nature, I don't even know what this is about. I thought it was about one thing. It looks like it's going to be about that one thing, but I mean, this. I say let's go into the first big point of this show because I have questions about what the heck I just watched and possibly how it relates to a video game because this seems extremely slow
Yeah,
for the
I,
way
I
any
think we
video game
found
I would know would move.
the perfect pairing here between us because, like, of course, me coming in with the knowledge of that, and you just coming into this completely blind is going to make this
Man.
super fun as we go through a lot of this episode. It's like, what's going on? So, yeah, like I said, what as we get into, if you guys have played the game, you know how this opens with, Sarah and Joel starting off the day. It's his birthday, and we see the show gives us a little bit more of showing the relationship between a little bit more of the relationship between Sarah and Joel. We get a little bit of that game, but they get it a lot more here. Is obviously we got a whole lot more time in this hour plus episode that we got here.
Man.
Um, and we see a little bit of what they show because in the game they only show that little bit of a scene where they're having that exchange with, like, his birthday, and then it cuts to night, and then all of the craziness happens. We don't get any of the school
Oh,
scene
so
or anything else.
okay, then I have a question for you,
Yeah.
and I'm gonna flip this a little bit because you being the game Finiciato and me knowing absolutely nothing about it. Certain things that the show showed, the scenes at the beginning with the doctors during the interview, is that something that the game ever goes into? Because I
No.
do like the way they played it off, where you get the one doctor and he's talking about a viral infection and how that could be a huge fear. And granted, that was clearly a nod to what we just went through and coming out of a
Right.
pandemic. And him even pointing out, no, millions may die, but in the end, we will win. Versus a fungal infection that fungal infections they adapt quicker. They can take over you completely and control you if necessary.
Hmm.
Like, so does the game ever like set up what's going on with them and a virus the way the show attempted at the beginning to separate itself from what possibly people like me thought coming in the door about it?
Right. So kind of like The Walking Dead, where you never really know the origin of like what it is.
Mm.
They actually show you what it is that's infecting people, and like you said, it's spores, it's whatever. Like you can physically see them in the air,
Hmm.
like in certain parts where like they have a scene in here where you see a lot of the buildup, but and like the zombie thing where this definitely zombies, but like they actually show you and explain to you what the science is that's infecting it, but they don't have like an origin point of like where it came from.
Uh,
Kind of like that show as
okay.
well.
Oh, okay. In the video game, do the monsters resemble the villain from Blade 2? Or is it just in this one that
Yo,
they went with the idea to have them resemble like the scary new vampire in Blade 2 with the things coming out their mouth? Because that's the first thing that came to my mind. Like, oh, they stole
well,
Blade 2
this is
vampires and made
also
them into
like the
zombies.
the origins of like what they call like the clickers and stuff like that. They have like different
Hmm.
forms. The more infected you are in the game, stuff like that, the variants that you see of like these mutated or whatever,
Hmm.
you see different versions of them here. That's but like you said, they've shown us from the beginning, because like in the game you really don't see too much, because like at the beginning of it all, everything is dark. You don't really see, and you don't really see
Okay.
like what they look like until like later on, and until we get like to where we are down in the show. But you get, like I said, it's different variations of like what these like different creatures and
Mhm.
stuff like that, or the mutation of what these people are.
Okay, so then as somebody who played the video game, did it make you appreciate it more that you got more of the backstory? Because that's what made this episode longer, is
Yeah.
giving you that full backstory. Did you appreciate that more because it gave you a different take on things?
Yeah, I definitely did. Especially like the scene here at the beginning of it with the old lady. In the
Hmm.
game, they have a scene where she kind of like runs up against like the sliding glass door, but you never know
Yeah.
where she comes from. They give that Matt more backstory to what that was
Mm.
now. Ellie, Sarah going over to the house, helping out or watching the lady or whatever while her dad's coming home from work, stuff like that. All we see at the beginning of it in the game version of it is that this thing just runs up on the glass and they need to get the hell out the house.
Ah. So they do a good job of elaborating on stuff that the game didn't, possibly because the difference between a video game that you're playing versus a show that you're watching is you have to give certain elements of a
Yeah,
backstory, especially for people like me. Again, it's gonna be a heap of people who've never seen this as a video game, and they're only going to know this about what they watch. I was confused because I knew the the setup was Joel and someone named Ellie. So me watching this, I'm like, wait a minute. So is Ellie half black? And they survived
yeah,
everything. So it threw me for a loop to see him and Sarah, but it was a great portion to set up the character of Joel and how important Tommy is to him, because he's a running thing throughout this first episode to set all that up to make people understand the situation that we're in, down
right.
to the military control. Is the military control that's shown in this first episode, is that harped on in the video game?
Yes. Yeah,
Huh.
so like they almost had that like scene for scene, like that whole
Okay.
beginning thing, yeah, where like they're driving through the field and like the
Hmm.
soldier like winds up, shooting at Joel and everything like that. I mean, it touched me here too, because that scene gets me every time I play the game, man. Where they have that thing where she kind of, I don't want to say sacrifices herself, but like he winds up. This is the part where you start to see Joel go down a super dark path. This is the beginning of it. Like
Mm.
once he lost his daughter, that was it for Joel. He stopped giving a shit about everything, and
And
you see the scene where like his brother, he's asking for help or whatever, and he just like, you can see like in his eyes like she's already gone. There's nothing else he can do. He can't help her.
mhm.
And like I said, like after that whole thing with Sarah, man, he just stops caring about everything and everybody. And you're probably gonna
Okay.
definitely, and you see a lot of that here, is you see like throughout the show, like everybody is like super scared of Joel. He's like the super tough guy.
Yeah.
He just does not give any fucks about anything.
I mean,
But
he
yeah,
went
that
from
scene
a
that
day
scene like I said,
laborer
like
to an
it's super tough to
to,
watch with Sarah, and I was wondering how they were going to do that. If they were they going to shy away from it, or they were
mhm.
just gonna, and they I think they did a really really good job of recreating that, and the actress that played his daughter did a really really good job as well.
So then they turned him from a day laborer into this assassin that could
Yeah,
beat everybody up.
that
now,
is, yeah. Joe,
now,
Joe's not Joe's not a good guy. And I think people need to remember that. That was
really,
something that I think we're gonna start to see a little bit more too in the show, and people were mad about. And the sequels are not. We're not even touching that, but it's something that happens to Joel in the sequel that people were super mad about. That people need to remember that Joel makes terrible decisions throughout this entire thing, and this is clearly one of them, as we see in this first episode.
So then, after this, we get transported to the DMZ, because that's the only point of reference I have for this military world. Is I just saw this show on HBO. And this world reminded me of the DMZ world, almost to a T. So it kind of evoked a little concern about where the show was going. But here we get the crux of Joel's mission. We introduced to these new characters, and we get the introduction of Ellie through this whole sequence, because this is the slowest part of the first episode. Was this something, again, as somebody who knows this story, was this something you needed, or was this something you thought, we could skip a little bit of this because it's a tad bit boring?
I don't think it was unneeded. You got to think too, like a lot of like video games, like the cutscenes are made a certain length to keep you going. So you're not about to sit there and watch a 45-minute cutscene and then you resume gameplay. So it's a lot of this might be a 5 or 10-minute scene, resume. So a lot of questions were, like I said, with Ellie, you don't really get a lot of backstory, like what's going on with her. All you know when you get the game is, look, she needs to be delivered to XYZ. Marlene, needs you to go on this mission. She's leader of the Fireflies, and everything happens, and like I said, they don't really give you a lot of that until late at the end of the game, as to what was going on with her and what this mission was.
So does the game give you the full backstory between Joel searching for Tommy and him needing to get this truck, him needing to get this battery, and him working with, was it Tess?
Yeah, Tess. To
get everything done? And does it expound on whatever relationship they have? Because I think that was the most interesting part.
You did not. That's a big thing that I wrote down here too. Is like we get more of the relationship between Tess and Joel. That's something you don't really see. It's kind of hinted at, but there's not really a lot of time in between. Their situation that we get a lot to really focus in on them, because then the story then focuses on Joel and Ellie throughout the rest of everything else. But yeah, I was happy to see, because I was like, when they had the scene where like somebody creeps in the bed, I'm like, who is that? You never see Tess and Joel really like on that level. You knew they had a relationship, but you never really see anything beyond that.
Or anything of the, do you see anything of the nature between Tess and Ramsey, and that situation play out and their obvious fear of Joel? Does the video game ever go into that detail?
No,
because it seems like here we have different factions.
Yeah, we got the Fireflies. Fireflies are like the ones that are trying to take back control of the zones, from the military and stuff like that. They're trying to give everybody freedom. And we have the Fireflies, and there's a couple of like wild organizations, but the Fireflies are like the main focus of the show. They're the ones that are contracted to do this mission to get Ellie to where she needs to be.
Yeah, because I was confused. That was the most confusing element of this show, and I wasn't sure if it was something from a video game standpoint that was confusion, or was it just something that the story naturally sets up to explain later, and that was just Ellie appearing out of nowhere, and then her being locked up and having to count. Because I'm assuming this is how they test to see if you're infected.
Yeah, they test your cognitive to see if you zapping out. Something's gonna go. And as we see in the episode, Ellie is the first and only person that seems to be immune to whatever the spore or whatever the situation is, because we have the scene where she's tested and yada. She said, it's been 3 weeks since everything happened, but she is the first, and this is also the reason why they're on that mission, as you'll find out later. They're trying to get her somewhere so that they can pretty much make the cure to everything that's going on. So you're talking 20 years, and she's the first person. It's probably also why they gave us that backstory as to where she's being tested at the beginning. But yeah, she's supposed to be the cure to everything that's going on, right? And they need to get her from A to B so they can find a way to produce the cure.
So she's Will Smith and I Am Legend.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. See, again, I'm just picking up on things. I'm just noticing a lot of connections to zombie stories I already knew
Yeah.
something about. So okay, so we got a little bit of the DMZ with the surrounding area. We got a little bit of I Am Legend and a little bit of Blade 2, which is very interesting to mix.
They did like the Blade 2. You
Very
know,
interesting to mix all that together here.
I gotta say too, man, the set design on this is incredible. They got it
Mhm,
almost like point for point on the rooms. That when I was looking at Joel's room at the beginning of this, I'm like, damn,
mhm.
they got that like to a T. The house, like some of like the DMZ area, like just the way it's filmed and it looks exactly like the game. And I was just like,
Hmm.
it's somebody that like I was trying to find reasons to like really not nitpick it, but it's spot for spot. I mean, even the casting in this alone. I mean, I probably wouldn't have picked the Mandalorian as Joel, but and
Well, Pedro's a good actor, so like,
yeah,
and amazingly here, I feel he's better here than what I've seen in The Mandalorian with him in it. In this first
right.
episode,
He
he's
has
better,
to
and
more
that's
so
not a,
emote in that more.
yeah.
Yeah,
And here you get the outward emotion. I guess it's the quiet intensity at times.
yeah,
Is Joel pointed in the game to be the strong, and I always use Clint Eastwood type. No offense to anyone else who does this, but the quiet, forceful, like Western Clint Eastwood type of character. Is that the way that Joel is portrayed in the show? I mean, in the game, because he's clearly portrayed that way in this show of being a very forceful person, but a man of few words,
right.
but a lot of actions, and he's very straightforward about what he wants to get done.
Oh, absolutely. Like when it's like I said, when it comes to getting stuff done, Joel is the guy that you call. I mean, like, and you get a lot of that in the game with the relationships of different people that you meet as you go along that know him, that know what Joel's about, and they get into more missions with Joel. You get into more stuff about Joel's previous missions with the Fireflies and like what he's done
Mhm.
in the past. Obviously, 20 years that we have this time skip. He's had to reestablish his life and become a drug runner apparently, which they do
Yeah.
not show in the game. By the way, they do not show him out here selling hydrocodone and oxy in the
Oh.
game. We just all we see in the game is pretty much like we know he does like pretty much goes on scavenger hunts, goes outside of the zone and does missions, but we never get into like real detail as to like what he was doing. And we get a little bit more of that here apparently, which I definitely appreciated because it was just like again, it's not necessary for the game, but like for the show format, I think that was pretty necessary to see what exactly the heck he's been doing to survive for 20 years.
Mhm. Yeah,
Which
because in a game format, you just want to rush to get to the next scene that you can play. For a
right,
show, you got to keep the audience intrigued throughout the entire thing.
right,
And I did appreciate the backstory of, okay, he has a connect to get these drugs done, but the drugs are only being used as a way for him to buy things to achieve his mission.
yeah,
So again, it's like, hey, if you didn't think he just was working and he magically got enough money to do the things he needed to do, it was no, he went other routes to call in favors to get things done. So I know you said the set design was spot on. I'm assuming then the atmosphere that this show sets up in the first episode is spot on with the video game.
oh for sure, yeah. And I thought they were, I didn't think they were gonna jump it back to 2003 when they had the Motorola Nextel joints. But
Mhm.
and then we get, of course, we jump to like
Don't worry
2020.
about it. You just showed your age because that was a Nokia phone, but it's fine. It's fine. It's fine. It's fine. I mean, it's fine. You're
I
young.
had a
You
Motorola.
didn't
You
know.
push the buttons.
You didn't know. You didn't know. You didn't know. You thought that was a Nextel phone. That was clearly a Nokia phone, but it's
Oh
fine.
my god!
We get it. We understand. But
But
again,
yeah,
go ahead. I
just
didn't
like
mean
I
to
said,
interrupt you. I just had to correct you there.
of yeah, they do a good job of showing that time skip and even like self-containing like that time zone of 2003. So it didn't look like it
Hmm.
was ridiculous when we jumped 20 years later. And as you see, like as you see right now, pretty much the world is done for the most part. Like you'll
Yeah.
as we get into more episodes, you'll start to see just like as we get out into the world, pretty much just dead, like desolate, like areas
Mm.
have been evacuated. The typical zombie thing, like buildings are pretty much done. As you see, like here with the drugs, like it's pretty much a barter system now to get things. And like you said with DMZ, like everybody's trying to hold down territory and stuff like that, and make sure they can take care of everything else. And so you got to figure out ways to get food and supplies. As you see, they got the ration tickets. If you see in the episode, like the guards passing out ration tickets, which are the currency now, it's no longer money or anything like that. They got the ration tickets to give out to people. You do a little bit of work. They were burning bodies and stuff like that. People that were infected, and they pass out the ration tickets to that's pretty much the money. You know what I mean? Like so. That is
I thought that was Monopoly money. I was highly confused what the hell they were giving out.
Yeah, you turn those in, you get some food and supplies, medicine, stuff like that, and
Okay.
that is the $1 million bills in this world. You know what I mean? So because everything is so hard to come by, or as you'll see later, it'll be highly infected zones that are too dangerous to get food and supplies from. So it's not worth the risk. So pretty much just hold down the zone. As we see where they live at and everything like that. They have like a little gated community that you're not supposed to leave in and out of, but you see they get a little bit more here. But yeah, they did a really good job on just I think just the world building, just setting that up here, and giving us like I said, spot for spot on the world of the video game, and just showing us a lot of like how everything is here, how everything is now 20 years later after that whole outbreak goes down. Man, no, go ahead.
So does the video game transition as fast as this first episode did from kind of everything being okay, or they kind of hinted towards it in a news report that it was an outbreak somewhere and something was going on in a part of the world, but they didn't really explain much of anything.
Right.
So in the game, do we get the transition as fast? Because I did appreciate that this didn't drag on for episodes, or that I had to go through a flashbacks of when the outbreak happened, because that's been done so many times. But here you get the day seems fine. They get hints of things that are kind of wonky in the world, but by nightfall, the whole world is crazy. Does the transition happen that fast in the game, or is just something that the show came up with an idea to do?
No, like I said, like a lot of that, like that scene in the beginning where they were explaining that's clearly not there. They don't do that. A lot of they don't really get into, like I said, a lot of the backstory of like what it is. You kind of just jump into what the world is now and keep it moving.
Oh, okay.
But I can tell you, like, this first episode is probably like the first 4 hours of the game. The first 4 or 5 hours of the game. That game is super. That first game is like 40 hours long. Yeah.
It took 4 hours to get to what I got. You know what?
Yeah, it's a lot of transition of like talk to this guy, talk to that guy. This happens. We don't even get. I don't even think you get out of. I don't even think you get out of the DMZ Boston zone until like a good 3 hours, 4 hours into the game.
Oh man, now I don't feel so bad that the show was long.
Yeah,
because if it took 4 hours of source material to build, then it would make sense why this first episode was a little longer than the normal hour-long episode that you would get, which is not a bad thing, because again, there's enough explaining for people who are coming in new to the world exactly what's going on. That part I wasn't confused about. I was confused how it connected to the video game, but not necessarily confused about what was going on, because they did a great job of just lining everything up to let you know this is the whirlwind, this is what's going on, this is just going to happen. Do you think from this first episode that, or are you expecting them to stay faithful to the game throughout? Again, without spoiling anything, because you've played the game, so if they are faithful, you know exactly where this is going.
Yeah,
but with this being, as you put, so faithful to the story in the video game, is this something that will intrigue you enough to watch? Because that's going to be the key question here. Because if people have played the game already and you know where this has ended up and where it's going, why would you want to watch it?
Right.
Or is this something that you're wondering, is there going to be a big switch in something?
I think that is something that I wonder. I think because they've already started to deviate from certain points and extend things, that they are going to switch it up a bit,
Hmm.
and be surprised. And it's not like the first time they've done something like this, because like you just said, will be the point of me watching something that I've already played through at least 3 or 4 times already, and I know everything that's going to happen. Um, like I said, that whole thing with Ellie being like chained up and everything, that I don't remember that being a thing.
Neither do
So
I.
yeah, that she's kind of like just there and just like, okay, yeah, we're ready to go. You don't have that whole exchange like between Ellie and them in the hallway and everything like that. So I am looking forward to see like what it is they change, and like people gonna be mad about it either way.
Yep.
But I think like you just said, I think the best thing for them to do would to be tweak it a little bit and surprise us with some stuff that we didn't see the first time around.
Okay, so with this being the end of the first episode, what are your overall thoughts on the potential of this series? Is it going to relate? Is it going to relate well to another zombie show that just recently ended? God, thank God that it ended. That everyone talks about, which is The Walking Dead, because that's the immediate comparison to this show. Is The Walking Dead? What are your thoughts on this first episode? And if you think at all this show has separated itself enough from the premise of The Walking Dead to bring a new audience in, or bring in that old audience in and know that they're going to get a completely different story.
I mean, just my thoughts on the first episode in general. Like I said, I thought they did an amazing job of handling that first couple hours of the game. Everything from seeing like the planes
Mhm.
crash, the people being turned in the streets, and you see them being chased. Like that whole scene with Joel and Sarah out in the field, they did spot on. And like just comparing this to like, I remember when this first came out. The game came out 2013. So
Mhm.
that first game came out in 2013, and immediately like the of course like the relation was like, okay, is this going to be like this? Because you get tired of zombie stuff real quick, and I think the
Yes, you
thing
do.
that
Mhm.
really differentiated this for me was it wasn't really zombies. They're still mutated, but like zombies. Okay, one person bites this person, they die, yada yada. Kind of the same thing, except like I feel like in The Walking Dead, they don't really have a lot of variations of like what the zombies are. They might have like the fat zombie stuff like that, but like in this, there is a lot of different variations of these different creatures, like these clickers, whatever that come at you. Plus, of course, you get the story of all the
Mhm.
characters and how the world, which is pretty similar to Walking Dead. You know what I mean? Because like once we get away from the zombie stuff, it's like how these people living continuing to live in this world that's pretty much dead. And like I said, I think they did an amazing job in this first episode. It's definitely caught my attention. Like I said, from the beginning of this, I didn't expect much. I
Mm.
had my Gabriel. It was a Gabriel Luna that plays his brother.
Yes.
Um, and I didn't even know he was going to be in this until I until I watched this today. We have Ellie, who's played by the actress
Bella
from
Ramsey.
yeah, from Game of Thrones. She was the young queen
Yep.
that was in that, and
Mhm.
she does a really really good job in this. But like, um, I'm really in this to see how this is going to continue to deviate from the video game, and I feel like that's
Mm.
that's that's going to be half the fun of me watching this is just saying, okay, that's different. Okay, they did something new. And you just I obviously see what your reaction to like where the story goes
Man,
going forward. But no, I don't think this is. I don't even think you could compare this to the Walking Dead anyway. And because
that's great. That's
I feel
great.
like the Walking Dead has its. I don't even know how to compare that. Like I
Hey,
feel like
the
it's had its
point
top. Yeah.
the point you told me I don't have to worry about it being connected to a show I did not like nor watch, I'm
Mm,
perfectly fine with. I
mm,
mean, at least from what I saw in this first episode, it started off like gangbusters. Everything, so much action, so much excitement, and then it hit a slow point. And that slow point was at times a little rough, but
mm.
it's needed for this type of story to
Right.
expound on the characters, to introduce new characters, to introduce kind of the main protagonist of the story. It was needed to show you that. It did remind me a lot of other things. I've already brought it up. DMZ first came to mind. Blade 2 has come to mind. Uh, I Am Legend has come to mind here.
Yeah.
World War Z comes to mind with the way the zombies move here.
Yeah.
Like, so it feels like it takes elements from different things, but because this is not the first or the last, or possibly even in the next month, the last zombie show you will see,
No, definitely not.
such a genre that's used so often that you're kind of expecting these things to be used from one universe to the next universe. At times, it's kind of becomes standard fare to use some of these things. But what separates this show so far for me has been the atmosphere that this show sets up
Mhm.
and Pedro's performance. Those are the two things that separate it right now. His performance as this character Joel is very much a Western performance and not an over top Western performance. It reminded me of like The Good and the Bad and the Ugly, and
Yeah.
just the way that character moved. His character Joel moves the exact same way. That single-minded focus on what the mission is. And I'm interested to see how it blends with him and Ellie, and how they choose to blossom that relationship on the show versus what happens in the video game. Because I do think they're going to separate the two, because they got to keep you intrigued. I wouldn't even be surprised if, and I know a lot of people is going to make a lot of you mad, it is a good chance that within this first season, they're going to explore video game 1 and video game 2 and find some way to put both of those things together. So if there's elements of video game 2, which I know for a fact there are elements of video game 2 that people absolutely hate, some of those characteristics I believe will show up in season 1, because you have to lay the groundwork for it. Unlike a video game that you can kind of shock people with, you cannot shock people in television. You have to show that this is something you should be remembered. This character is, as you pointed out, Joel is not a good person.
No.
So I don't think this show's going to go out its way to make it seem like he's a good person. I think it's going to go to show you like this is who this guy is, for good or for bad, for better or
That,
worse. As what's Marlene? Am I saying her name right?
yeah. Yeah.
As
Marlene
Marlene
Firefox. Yeah.
said, like, I know what you two are capable of, and I know what you can do for good and for bad. So it is kind of letting you know, like, in this zone, in this area, these two characters aren't known as being good people. So if they're already not known as being good people, you shouldn't be shocked when they do things that good people don't do.
Yeah, I think the big thing about that too is like obviously as the game goes on, the show goes on, the relationship between Joel and Ellie makes him seem like he's a really good guy, and for the most part he is, because Ellie then becomes the sub for Sarah.
Sarah. Mm-hmm.
Later on, as you see, and he sees he wants to be pretty much, he wants to protect her the way he couldn't obviously in the beginning of this whole situation. So that's where you start to see him start to become. I don't want to say you start to see him become more humanized, like because he just completely just, like I said, just cuts off all emotion throughout the game and just like, hey, whatever, I'm here to do this and let's go. I'm here to get paid, you know. So that's a lot of what you see. But like what you said earlier about just like, you know, seeing the difference with this show is that obviously we, you know, we know that Ellie is the cure and that he needs to get her, and that's what, you know, the I Am Legend thing comes in, because, you know, Will Smith's working on that, you know, through the whole thing, and, you know, stuff like that. So like I said, it definitely, now that I think about it, I never thought about it before, it is definitely a lot of those different elements combined into this one thing. Yeah. Like,
I mean, that's all I need Ellie to do is to get a dog. And then I need her to yell at a mannequin that just magically ends up somewhere the mannequin shouldn't be. That's all I need. And then I'll be perfectly happy with this show.
Yeah, that scene still freaks me out. It was like he wasn't there the other day. But I don't know if I don't think they're going to touch 2 at all. I think we're strictly going to stay on the first one, because the second one is another pretty much another time skip. So I
No,
don't.
let me phrase, not touch necessarily on the stories of two, but possibly the characters' characteristics.
Mm,
Because you got to show that this is a potential that this person could do things.
okay.
So even if you do a time jump, you want to show that this is a possibility that this character can do. He can turn a certain way, or Ellie can turn a certain way. We kind of saw it here when you seen the jump from 2003 to 20 years later.
Mm,
While he went from a simple job to what he does now, the characteristics of that person was always there.
right.
Like it just became more highlighted because of it. We saw the moment Sarah was in trouble when him and Tommy raced back to the home as the old lady is eating the family, and his reaction and what he does to that old woman technically is the Joel you see 20 years later.
Right.
Like it's the same person because the characteristics are still there. So I just think that because I don't believe this is a miniseries, so they got to be clearly setting up a
Yeah,
season two.
that's another question. I don't know if this is like a one and done, or are we gonna get more. Obviously, you know what I mean. And to jump back on your point, like with Joel, like when he cracked her with that wrench, yeah, a normal person would have hesitated. They wouldn't have done something like that because you don't know what's going on. You see a lot of like what Joel is when he's like, "Yo, keep moving.
Yep.
Somebody else will come back and get them. Run these
Yeah.
people over."
Hey,
you know,
that was a hard scene to watch with the young actress that plays Sarah, and when she starts crying, when he basically is like, "They gotta die," like
yeah,
because that's exactly what he's saying. When Tommy said, "Man, they have a kid, we have a kid. Drive by, somebody
right.
will get them." He knew no one was coming back for them. He knew that for a fact. But again, that single focus, like, nope, the goal is to save us, and we're not going out our way to save anybody else. Any final thoughts on this first episode of The Last of Us on HBO? I don't even know the name of this first episode. I just thought about that.
I don't think I see a title either. But yeah, no, it was like I said, it was a little lengthy on the setup. Like you said, it was slow on some parts. It probably was a couple things. I'm like, man, we probably could have cut this. But overall, I did it. I think it did a really good job of to setting up what this world is to a new audience, people that's never touched the games, probably never going to touch the games. And
Mhm.
everybody, like I said, everybody did a really amazing job. I really like the casting for Marlene. I really like I said, Gabriel Luna. We get my man is Joel. I cannot remember his name. What's
Did
that? What's
you
the actor that plays Joel?
get Joel's name?
What I what is this guy's name?
Pedro Pascal.
Pedro Pascal. Thank you. I've seen this
Out of
guy in Wonder Woman and
all,
everything else.
I'm about to say, well, if you saw him in Wonder Woman, you should forget him. But
Yeah, so
how do you forget the
he's
star
he,
of the
he's
show's
been in
name?
everything. But yeah, everybody did an amazing job. Like I said, if you your first time watching this, like I said, it looks exactly how it looks in the game, and it's probably going to have you jump back and play it if you're on a PlayStation or
Mm.
whatever. So, but no, really,
Or
really great episode.
PC because it comes out this coming up year to coincide with the show. They're releasing it on PC, the first game.
Oh,
So again, the goal, Sony has a very smart strategy here. And no better way to sell more units than to put out the
if
show
you can get one,
and
yeah,
then offer this up to different formats and saying, hey, maybe you don't need a PlayStation to own this
right.
game. We'll put it on different systems for you to play this game because we need this audience. So this has been an amazing first episode review of a episode we don't know the name of. We're just gonna
Right.
call it the pilot episode, episode 1, the pilot episode of The Last of Us. This episode, this review will drop along with every other review we do for Last of Us right immediately following the broadcast of the show. I think the show was showing on HBO on probably 9 o'clock on Sunday.
Yeah.
I know this one debuts January 15th. The first episode comes out because unfortunately we are seeing this a little ahead of time. So
Yeah.
we're just trying to guess everything. But it's January 15th that the first episode drops. So immediately following the release of that first episode, you can catch our review and catch us every Sunday. That's a Sunday, right? right? You're supposed to
Yeah,
help me out here, man.
we
See,
double
just
check
let me
this.
see what I
We
mean.
got my calendar
People
here.
people from Generation Z never do their job properly to explain
Yeah, it's the
anything
15th.
that
Yeah,
people.
January 15th. It's a Sunday.
So every Sunday you can catch our review of The Last of Us. Comment, like, subscribe. Along with this, we have so much more content coming your way with Big Gold Belt, and we want you all to check it out. Anything else, Tori?
Nope, that's it. See you guys later.
See, I got to make sure my little brother's fine before we get off air.
That was everything.
Peace, people.
See you.